Hello friends, welcome back. In this video I want to discuss my 7 priorities for music reproduction. Now this is not to be an absolute list, it is just my priorities, and what I've done is, what I've found is, and why I'm sharing this is because I found that it is, if you can articulate and listen for certain elements in the music quite well, what will tends to happen is that you're less likely to go off track, because you know what you're looking for. And so bit as a sort of maybe an expansion on my earlier video on finding your path to good audio, it helps you stay on track. And that's why I'm sharing this, so that you can verbalize it easily, you can express it easily, you can watch for it, to make sure that those elements, that your priorities stay on track. Now these are just my 7 priorities. Some of course don't work without the other, so it is intertwined, and it's just my priorities, so yours are probably very much different, but I hope regardless that you still get a lot out of it, and that just helps you forming a picture of what you like in music and what you don't find so important, so you can make the correct choices for you. And so what I'll do is I'll go over these 7 points very quickly, and then I'll expand on them. So here we go. So number 1 is your system's ability to connect you to musical expression. And so this is beyond notes and sound. We're talking about the overall expression, not the staticness. It is what makes it a recording special. I'll go into it a bit more. Number 2 is sounds like a succinct source. So you want it to sound like a single thing, even though that you have multiple drivers maybe in your speaker. It needs to sound like one thing, not different on the extremes of the sound spectrum. Number 3, which I highly value, is that it has a tangible real life presence. So it's not far away, it has this immediacy and tangibility of the music. It becomes a thing, every sound becomes a thing. It is not a sound somewhere in there or somewhere in there. No, it's a thing. It exists. Number 4 is the personality and individualism of each instrument and vocal, and even a track. So that it has a character of its own, just like every person in the world has a character of its own. So you can distinguish violin from violin and so on. So this happens in the details of the music. And I'll tell you a story about the 2 guitars that we had at home. Had the exact same strings, but they sounded completely different. And then all of that happens in the finer expression. So it's the personality of the sound that must be transferred. Now, number 5 is all about enabling number 4, really, in some ways, because in order for your system to show personality of the recordings, personality of the artist, it needs to get out of the way. Because if it impresses itself in a certain way, or expresses every violin with this enormous dynamic, say something like that, it will lose its personality, because it imprints a personality of its own. So your system needs to be out of the way, and it also needs to be quiet, so it can express these finer details at low levels. Then number 6, and you get a huge split of people here, we'll discuss that later, is the absence of artifacts. Things like tape hiss, groove noise, hum, hiss of amplifiers. So some people seem to listen through it, others don't. So and depending on that, you'll see huge changes in how that works. 7 is imaging. We're talking about retrieving a location of instruments, where they're positioned, acoustical and ambient clues that you want. So the whole imaging, the whole ambience where the recording was taking place, and a very good system can almost deliver you a 3D picture back into your room. For me that's a bit lower, because I don't care so much. I'm fine for things to sound right in my room. I don't need that other room be imposed on my room. It's nice, but don't have to have it. I had it before in other systems. So let's get into it. Now, connecting to musical expression. So what we're talking about is not just the static notes and the sound. Usually what you see with a very good musician is that their phrasing, their timing, the way they play with dynamics, and not dynamics just right there and there, but compared to the rest of the song or track or part, they'll play with that, with the quietness and the restraint, and then it flows out, it speeds up, it slows down, and then it goes with the dynamics. There's an interrelatedness between timing and dynamics that just, when you get that right, it just swings, even if it's an old poor recording. And one of the examples that I'll make a link in the description is Torsten from the Snake Oil channel. So what Audio Snake Oil, he gave an example between 3 bands. So one was a trio that was creating videos for educational purposes to play the drums in certain ways. And the other one is Ahmed Jamal. And they both play the same track, but Ahmed Jamal and his band, oh man, they just have this thing going that is just so expressive. And the other one sounds more like playing from sheet music. And the same happens with speakers. Some just do sheet music, it's all correct. But the others, they play live music, like they just it's full alive, and I think that is in the timing and dynamic correctness. So when I hear Audio Note, for example, I hear Audio Note talking about that whenever they make a decision between amplitude correctness or correction on the time dimension, that they choose the time dimension to be more correct. If they need to make a way, or they'll skew it towards the timing perfection. Not the static frequency response, which is amplitude visit. So that's that. I'll make the links in the description. Listen to those 2 things. I think the same happens with the speaker. So number 2, succinct source. As I said, if you have 3 drivers, you have a piano, then the piano will cover so many octaves from high to low, and you want the piano to sound as one thing. So that succinctness is very important. When you go to speaker design, is that the phase aligning and so on needs to be very good. You also need to have frequency response that's smooth enough so that if you have the overtones like the double and the quadruple and so on of the bass, of the fundamental tone, it needs to be in harmony with the rest. So you need to have some correct technical correctness to do those harmonies justice, and it needs to sound succinct, like that they are from the same source with the same timing. So that's why it's number 2. It's mostly because if you don't have it, the realism just drops a lot. So this is sort of a negative quality. It's just, you just notice when you do without it, it really undermines the music reproduction. That is not rocket science, but it's filter it. People with DSP will actually also do phase correct stuff and so on. They'll have some options there. Number 3, tangible real life presence. So what we're talking about here is that really credible reproduction, and when that goes right, what you get is this immediacy. So we're not having a sound somewhere in the depth or there, and it sounds, there's a violin. No, it is a violin. It sounds like a violin. It has the dynamics of a violin. It is effortless. It has the right weight. If you're talking more percussive or something, or even plucking of strings or anything, or hammering of strings instruments to do that, it needs to have a certain weight and an energy in the highs that go with that, and having natural decay of individual notes, and smearing needs to be low. All of those contribute to having the tangible thing, and if you accomplish this, you'll get what I mentioned also about synthesizer music on the Voice of Lancelot. Music, the notes, everything becomes a thing. So you hear something and it's a thing. It's not a sound somewhere there, or no, it becomes a thing, and that is a good measure of starting to build the tangible real life present. It also, if you have too much roll off in the highs, you'll also see that a lot of realism with instruments that have that, it will not sound tangible. It needs that energy for you, because if you ever stand away like 6 meters or 5 meters from a drum, say 15 foot or something, there'll be an energy. And if you want to if the stereo image is so that you're in the stereo image that far away from the instrument, you need to hear the energy that goes with that. Some single-ended amps go, tube amps go completely wrong with that, I find, that have poor power supplies. Number 4, personality. So, this is best illustrated. So we had 2 guitars at home, Spanish guitars, same strings, 3 nylon strings, 3 metal strings with horsehair in the middle. But they sounded completely different. One was also slightly louder, but it also had a much more even response. Beautiful tone, beautiful decay. Just the echo that comes, the decay, the sort of lingering sound from the body was just beautiful. So it gives a far more fuller voice. So even though the direct sounds, if you would pluck the string or play the notes, move your hands, that sounded quite the same. But the detail, of course, that made the one guitar sound miles better than the other is in the detail. It is the finer expression of that instrument. It happens on a much lower level that makes all the difference. Yet, if we're talking in volume, and if you would point the mic at it, it would be very easy for a system to replicate the loudest facets of the instrument in a waveform. But if you're talking about the minute stuff that happens maybe at the 10,000th of a watt, how is that being articulated? Is that articulated at the same level? Because that, I feel, gives the personality and the individualism of each instrument and vocals in a recording. Even the personality of the recording itself, from the recording artist, from the studio monitors that they used to mix it down. This will all give its personality. And you get as your system gets better, you get a stronger impression of what the time period was that it came from, what the mood is of the person playing, what their worldview is maybe even. It is quite uncanny, but it all happens at a very low level. Now, number 5 is, as I said, is in order for that to happen, this finer detail, which by the way is never measured, because the finer detail, if your system plays at 80 dB, nobody measures how your 30 dB signals are doing. Nobody does that. So, and are they as expressive? Do you still hear them or not? Now, a good system, what it does is it gets out of the way and is quiet. And I'll sort of make a differentiation here with not black, because black can also be the missing of information. So what I find is, as the quality of your transducers improve, they get more quiet and they articulate it better. They have a lower distortion. And what seems to happen is that, and this also, the accuracy from quiet to loud is the same. It's very high. It drops less when it gets quieter. And as that happens, what you see is that your system seems to get quieter. The noise floor seems to drop. It is, of course, not the real noise floor, but it seems that way. And one example was this speaker. So this is an Adam speaker monitor. They use the air motion transformers. And what I noticed when I hooked this up to our television, that we could drop the volume about 8 decibels. Just because this AMT is so much more efficient, uses probably a much lower gain than the amplifier for the woofer part. This is a bi-amp internally. So that is just because the amount of detail that the noise floor seems to drop with a better coupling driver, and this is a much more efficient than that, I think. But that does this, so it gets out of the way, it's quieter, it has lower distortion. And then if you go another step level up, a compression driver is just even more than the AMT. So that's getting out of the way and being quiet. And this almost automatically leads to a non-fatiguing sound when a system is able to articulate as well and have low distortion, and also is very good at low level as well as higher levels. So, and that is a precursor to doing individual sound, because systems that exaggerate, for example, harmonics will always sound the same at a certain volume level, so and that will prevent the personality from coming through. Now number 6, this splits people, and I'll tell you why. It's nice to have no groove noise. You want the rumble of your turntable to be low. You want no hum from your directly heated triode. Hiss, tape hiss, all those effects, you know, they do get in the way. And really, if you calculate it, for example, hum, if it, say you have a hum of 3 millivolts in your preamp, and actually then you calculate that the number 13-bit or so is also 3 millivolt, and you can see that those lower order bits in the music signal, if you use a digital source, will actually not come across, because this will just outflank it completely, and will start to mask it as those signals become less and less. Now, humans have the capability of masking it out, because I found, even after 30 years of being digital, that I can mask out groove noise very easily. So it's not a problem for me. It doesn't prohibit me from enjoying the music. But I do try to keep it as low. My turntable has very low rumble noise, like it's at minus 80 dB. It's just not there even. It's unbelievable, really. And with the mono cartridge, the groove noise is kept to a minimum. But so that's that. But what I want to say about this is that your hearing might be different, and the way you appreciate this. This will widely vary, because I've seen people where I let them listen to 2 tracks. One, say for example, the Stones. One is a remaster that is quite faithful to the original analog production, and then you've got one where it's made into a modern sound, where all that noise is stripped out, but it sucks up a lot of the aliveness of the recording. To me, it sounds completely dead, but a lot of people will sound the sanitized version, where the energy is removed, so then they'll prefer to not have that tape hiss and sort of the microphone artifacts that are just in the music, and they want it to sound modern, and they prefer that. So if that's the case, this will go way up. You know, you might even discard analog sources altogether and just go with something that only does it's more black. Now finally, number 7, also a point where a lot of you will have a much higher this will be much higher on your list. If you want imaging, basically what you want is that all the ambient clues and location of instruments, the depth, the width, the height, everything that a good 3D system that images well can do for you, you want to impose all those ambient clues into your listening room, and you're using the 2-point sources to reach your ears at the same time, so that you can get the perfect binaural replication of what the sound as it reached the microphones. So if they did the mixing really well, and the close-up in mixing of a thing, that you can have a brilliant image and have that be very present in that soundscape. But what you're doing is basically imposing acoustical clues that you get from the recording into your room. And so your room transforms, but your room, what you need is your room to drop completely on the background. Your room needs to disappear. So sound treatments, very careful placement, away from walls, away from back walls. Yeah, it's going to look very different. So for me, it's quite low on the list. So I'm happy for this to sit at number 7, but your mileage may certainly vary. Anyway, that's my list and the explanation. I will leave links to that thing from Snake All Audio and from Torsten, the 2 links there. It's brilliant to see, to listen to the difference between those 2 tracks. It's night and day. Very funny, very good find. Thank you, Torsten. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this a little bit longer video, and that I hope this helps in some way for you to establish your priorities and articulate them. And I hope to see you in a little bit more pragmatic next video. And until then, please have a great day, take care, and I'll hope to see you then. Bye bye.